Welcome back, everyone, to the Unclassified Podcast. I'm joined here, as always, with Preston Stewart, and we have a lot to talk about today. We're talking about Oblitergate, obliterate, both gate at the end of it. Yeah. We're also talking about the NATO summit that was went well, but was a little weird, and also we're going to talk about how I got banned from Twitter. So, not banned, suspended, I should say. And all the more. But remember, folks, remember to like, comment, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Apple and Spotify. We're growing so fast.
Spotify's booming, man.
Yeah, I was in the grocery store the other day, and someone came to me and said, "You look like you have a podcast that's exploding right now." And I said, I do. It's called the Unclassified Podcast. And so I made him give me 5 stars before
on the spot, kind of held him down and pushed the button. Yeah,
absolutely.
Joking aside, though, the numbers are booming on Spotify. It's awesome.
Oh, without a doubt. We're going so fast. Light speed. But before we get into the important things, you want to talk about how I got suspended on Twitter this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a track record. I've had some issues with TikTok. I think I'm on like 3 permanent suspensions that somehow become unpermanent. But I've never had any issues on X. X is a free for all, man. You gotta cross some serious lines to get Elon to say no more.
You would think. So you know who Mamdani is? This guy who just won in New York.
He's not particularly. Is that the mayoral race?
Yeah.
Okay, and he's controversial, right? Like a lot of people don't like him.
He's controversial. Okay, so he's like, he identifies as a socialist, I think, or a democratic socialist. He won. He beat out Andrew Cuomo. I don't care who becomes mayor of New York City. I don't live in New York City. I don't care if Mamdani wins. If he loses, I don't care. I think Eric Adams is pretty funny. But again, it's not my mayor's race, so I actually don't care about what's going on here. But I did take exception to people saying, so he is 33 years old, Preston. At 7 years old, he was born in Uganda. At 7 years old, he moved to the United States. And so he's been here for 26 years of his life. He is a U.S. citizen, and he ran and he won. Now, all these racists are on Twitter coming at, I kind of came at them, but then they came at me. And they're just saying, it's so ridiculous that an immigrant would run for office here. How ridiculous. All I'm saying is, Mamdani, if you come here at 7 years old, what is distinctly different between me and Mamdani, or between you and Mamdani? Is it just that we're born here? He came as soon as he could. I don't understand why everyone's so in a tizzy about this. But I said this, and they come at me talking about the blood of nations, the raping and pillaging of nations. And so I just said, you're from Alabama. We should wall it off and nuke it till your cockroach family's gone.
There it is.
Now, I got suspended for that.
Yep.
Okay? Now, I understand maybe I got a little heated, and it got the best of me. However, they are also advocating for violence, too. And I would argue I'm not even advocating for violence. I said a nuclear weapon. Those aren't lying around, okay?
They might be. That's part of the conversation we'll get to later, yeah.
Yeah, so those aren't lying around. So they all come at me, and then these people, they get to have Hitler profile pictures, but I suggest nuking Alabama, and all of a sudden I'm the bad guy. And the part I think is even crazier is they started talking about immigrants having impure blood. So I said they had impure Confederate blood. And they came at me and said, are you really saying that Americans have impure blood? And I just thought, this is ridiculous. You guys are, I'm arguing with the Hitler Mafia right now, okay? These people are crazy. And anyways, so I'm suspended on Twitter, so make sure you go follow me there. They're making me delete my Alabama tweet if I want to get unsuspended. So I did capitulate. I do realize it's maybe being a little unreasonable. But these people, they keep screenshotting the tweet and they say the internet's forever. But you have a Hitler profile picture, dude. I don't care. You can't cancel me. Anyways.
Wow. All right. So the Alabama tour is off. We're gonna have to swing.
Yeah, the Alabama tour
the Eastern Seaboard. Yeah.
I love Alabamans. I just
place.
don't like the people with the Hitler profile pictures who reside in Alabama.
Wow.
And they come at me. The audacity to come at me. All I was saying, and then they call me a boomer when I screenshotted the Declaration of Independence that says all men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with unalienable rights. Came at me. It's what a boomer take. What do you mean? Am I the only one who's an American here? I mean, good Lord.
I'm gonna save you from the self-imposed internet drama here with the anonymous trolls and say let's get into
get into things that matter.
Yeah.
Yes.
My God, Ben.
Yes. So my apologies. So Preston, we had an exhilarating week. What's going on here? Tell me what's happening here in Iran. So what's going on with Oblitergate?
The big one right now, I think, is really focused around the effects of the war is over, right? And there's so many different aspects to this. I'm kind of interested in what your takeaway is, because the war started. Israel, by all accounts, was incredibly successful. I mean, they've started to roll out data. There was a picture yesterday that came out. I don't know if they published this to get this message across or not, but it was an Israeli F-15 flying to Iran with no air-to-air or air-to-surface missiles, which means they were not even the least bit concerned about Iranian air defense and Iranian Air Force, which was a wild place to be 24 hours into this conflict. But by every metric, Israel came out on top here, with the exception of some unknowns on the back end. Now, that's not to say Israel didn't take some direct hits from ballistic missiles in some very populated areas. And I want to say 24, maybe 28 Israelis were killed, more than 3,000 wounded. Wow. So it's no joke. One soldier, one service member that entire time, and it was a service member at home with his family that was in an apartment building that was hit. So from what we're tracking at this point, I'm not sure a single Iranian missile got through to an Israeli military target once. So impressive showing by Israel, no doubt. France has come forward and said that they were helping with the interceptions at times. We know the U.S. was helping as well, I believe Jordan. But the big question is around this U.S. strike on the nuclear facilities. It was such a weird 48 hours where we carried out the strikes. Apparently that was it. Like, that's all it took to completely remove the Iranian nuclear program, which I don't think anybody ever has suggested that program could be completely eliminated from the air, which is part of the challenge when discussing Iran. Is like, we have never won a war or made decisive victory simply from airstrikes. There's always some ground element involved. You can't, it's just, whether it's us or it's an allied nation or a friendly group or whatever. But that was the claim. President Trump right out the gate, and this is where I think the problem started, to be blunt, is President Trump, in his announcement of the strikes, said that we obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. And I think the correct approach there would have been to say all the strikes were successful, they hit on target, the mission went completely according to plan, we have no indications that anything went wrong, but it's going to take us a little while to get an accurate assessment of the damage to the facilities, because that's the God's honest truth. And General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has been just a complete professional in towing that line and saying, yeah, wouldn't it be, not saying it this way, but he's saying, like, wouldn't it be nice to have all the details right now? It takes time, and we're waiting for all the details to come in. Unfortunately, because, my personal assessment is because President Trump so quickly said obliterated, you started to see people get on board to back that up. Because understandably, a lot of folks then said, are you sure? How do we know? And the problem is that comes from a couple different angles. First, you have people that just genuinely, if we're going to say we destroyed something this significant, let's make sure we actually did it. But then you have also, through this leak that went through the Defense Intelligence Agency to CNN and then other outlets, saying it was not destroyed. The problem there is that could be coming from people that just want Trump to look bad, to say he claimed victory but he didn't get it. It also could be coming from people that want to maybe force regime change in Iran and say, this can't be it, guys. We got so much more work to do in the Middle East. This isn't, no, not peace. So it's been a lot of back and forth on that. And from what I can tell right now, we have no new information. The Pentagon held a press conference. Good on them for holding a press conference. It was not what I think anybody expected. It was 30 minutes long. About 10 minutes was just bashing the media, to include Fox News. Hegseth went after Jennifer Griffin, Fox News Pentagon correspondent. About 10 minutes really talking good. About 10 minutes talking about the soldiers involved in the operation, which is great. I like that. I don't know that was what all the reporters were gathered there for. I don't think they're against publishing those stories. Ben, what do you got?
I thought it was touching, but it did feel like a commencement address.
It wasn't it's not what we're waiting for right now.
No.
Write those books, tell those stories, make those movies. Awesome. No doubt I want to hear more about the B-2 operation. But the question is, what's the status of the nuclear facilities? And we didn't get to that. The reporters started pushing for that, and that's when it kind of, in my opinion, kind of spiraled. A lot of personal attacks. But nonetheless, Then yesterday afternoon, the Senate had a classified briefing with the intelligence community, and they came out of that and they were able to offer some sound bites, with the reminder that it's classified, and didn't clarify anything. So we've got Senator Cotton, a Republican, came out and said the program has been heavily damaged, set back. Let me make sure I get the quote exactly correct here, because this is actually pretty important. So he said the report was preliminary, done with low confidence, and was done with numerous intelligence gaps that could lead to a broad range of conclusions. It was not the mission to destroy all of their enriched uranium or seize it or anything else. The damage done to Iran's vast nuclear infrastructure is an extraordinary success. My vote for Tom Cotton to take over DOD. I think he's the measured personality that we need there. Senator Graham, another Republican, said, I don't want people to think the site wasn't severely damaged or obliterated, because it was. And went on to talk about how, the real question is, does Iran still want to build a nuclear weapon? And then Senator Blumenthal, a Democrat, said after today's briefings, anybody who says we know with certainty of this attack is making it up.
Yeah.
My gut, and the frustrating part now is cool, now we have to read between the lines on this. My gut says the evidence was convincing that the effects were on target. We don't know the results of those effects.
I think that's right. The key language, I think, being that they were heavily damaged, as Cotton said, and as I guess Blumenthal didn't say that, but Graham said the same. It's interesting to hear them say that. I wonder, because we saw after the DIA report came out that they were restricting classified information to Congress. I wonder if they withheld anything. But it is interesting to hear the Senate kind of back up what everyone else has been saying. I guess maybe not really that shocking. I kind of thought they would do something a little fluky. But
one note here, IAEA did come out and say that based off of everything they've seen from the satellite imagery, they believe the infrastructure was severely damaged. And a lot of that hinges on the fact that centrifuges are very, very delicate. So any real disruption, and this is how they were taken offline over at Natanz. So Natanz has an underground facility, but above ground power generation. And Israel, in the opening days of the conflict, took out the generators, took out the electrical grids, all that stuff. And the IAEA looked at that and said, oh yeah, those centrifuges are done, without being able to see anything underground, just because even a short blip in the power supply could render them inoperable. So they're oh yeah, with no power supply for days on end, those are shot. It looks like they're taking a similar approach, IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, saying, yes, with that many bombs dropped in the vicinity of something that's very delicate, it is likely heavily damaged or destroyed. There's no indication that they have new intelligence, that they have somebody on the ground at the facility. From the satellite imagery, it doesn't look like there's anybody that's gone into the facility quite yet.
They keep saying Trump inferred that he had someone on the ground looking at it, and then so did Senator Mark Wayne out of Oklahoma. Also said they had someone on the ground looking at it. Do you think that is real, and they just revealed that we have human sources on the ground in Iran, or do you think they're just being dumb?
There are sources on the ground in Iran, no doubt.
Right.
We know Mossad has worked quite a few agents. So agents in this term are Iranian citizens working for another government. There may or may not still be some Mossad operatives, Israeli citizens, still inside of Iran. There was some rumors that were kind of danced around that the IDF may have actually had their own commandos on the ground. Not clear if they're still there. Then, of course, we have the IAEA inspectors. There are still some, I believe, some inspectors in Iran. They have not yet had access to any of the nuclear facilities, at least since the strike. But there are personnel there. And then do we have our own sources on the ground? Probably, to some degree. I don't know that I would read that as, like, Americans. It very well could be, like, a guard at Natanz that has provided information in the past. But, yeah, 100% there's sources on the ground. It's just a matter of what and who and where.
I think that's fair. I was a little nervous when I saw them saying it because I thought maybe they were revealing classified information of them being there.
Yeah, that would, yeah. That's human sources, human intelligence is something that you want to be overly protective of. And that's a challenge when it comes to this that we're looking at right now, is because You want the information out there, and I hope that a lot of the people consuming this information right now still have fresh in our minds the lead up to the Iraq War in 2003, where the information was, I mean, what's the right term here? Fabricated, modified, adjusted, exaggerated? Take your pick. It turns out a lot of the evidence presented at the time of the invasion turned out to not be accurate. So I think there's a lot of people now with that freshly in mind, 22 years ago, looking at this saying, let's just make sure. And some of this stuff's going to take time. If there's a human source inside of Fordo, they might not ever be able to release that publicly because it would burn the source. You know, for instance, if Iran has only allowed 6 people into the facility so far, and our best source is one of those 6, and he snaps some pictures, and we all of a sudden see those released on CNN, that's a problem because those 6 are probably going to be in for a rough ride, and they're probably going to find our source. So, you know, intercepted phone calls, all sorts of stuff that every piece of it that is released risks burning the source and removing that intelligence going forward. So, look, it's entirely possible we don't get the level of detail that we want in terms of the damage to these facilities.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I feel like we're left with more questions than answers currently, right? And I feel like that was always going to be the case, but I feel like now there's such a push for people to acknowledge one way or the other, you know, on whether or not if it's there or if it's not there. And it's left me with a lot of questions, a lot of follow-up questions, and no clear answers.
There's a real debate right now as to whether we're better or worse than we were 3 weeks ago, safer or less safe than we were 3 weeks ago. There are certain things that are without a doubt true. Quite a bit of the Iranian nuclear infrastructure has been destroyed. We can see that in above-ground imagery, no doubt about it. That is going to slow their nuclear program. Full stop. Like, even no matter what they have hidden or anywhere else, like even if they still have some capability, so much was destroyed, that's going to be a problem for Iran. A lot of their military infrastructure was destroyed, rockets and or missiles and missile launchers. A lot of their senior leadership killed. A lot of the nuclear scientists killed. All of this stuff, without question, would be a net benefit for U.S., Israeli, and a lot of our allied security. The big question here that there is no answer to quite yet, which is part of the frustrating piece, is did Iran have any secret facilities? They've done that in the past, where they also had centrifuges and maybe had some of this enriched uranium, because it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a nuclear scientist in Iran to say, I think somebody's probably going to attack these facilities. So do they have stuff off-site? And then what do they do moving forward? Did this attack push them into, and I'm fascinated with this question because we see it constantly brought up in international relations, but did this attack force Khamenei and the IRGC to say, you know what? We better not mess around with that nuclear weapons program because we almost got toppled. Or is it the exact opposite? And they say, lesson learned. If we actually had a nuclear weapon, this wouldn't have happened. And they sprint to development, which in that latter case, I would say that we're worse off today than we were 3 weeks ago. So I think it's very much up in the air. I don't think there's going to be a resolution in like the next 2 to 3 weeks, but I have a feeling that we'll get a better idea at maybe the 4 or 5 year mark looking back, and we can say, yes, those strikes were the linchpin in the full dismantling of the Iranian nuclear program, or, oh shit, that's when they went underground, literally and figuratively, and sprinted towards the development of their first weapon.
Do you think, what is your best guess? Do you think we will regret this, or do you think it'll be viewed as a smart move? If you had it go off the top of your head right now.
We need to follow up with a lot more things right now. Mm-hmm. So I think we run the risk of saying, mission accomplished. We did it. Great job, everyone. And I mean, Senator Graham yesterday was hitting on this, saying, hey, there's still more to be done here. So Iran can still rebuild their facilities, no question. So there's talk about what are we going to do to get back into some sort of nuclear agreement, and there's been some speculation floated out there. I don't think it's quite worth reporting on quite yet. There's going to have to be something where we have inspectors in the country making sure that they don't start to do this again. And then, of course, you got the issue of the driving factor. Is it Khamenei? Is it the IRGC? Which aspect of their leadership wants to pursue nuclear weapons technology? To me, that's the big piece. We're not done. That's going to require negotiations. Maybe Iran comes at it from a different place. But also we've got this, I'm just going to say it's unknown, the status of the highly enriched uranium. that depending on who you talk to, it's either buried underneath the rubble, it was not a part of the target set, or according to the IAEA, we don't know where it is. So I feel like we want so badly, and this is, again, just a frustration with President Trump, I think, declaring, President Bush back on the aircraft carrier. When was that, 2005 or something? Declaring victory,
mission
right?
Accomplished.
Mission accomplished. We want to do that so fast, and I think throughout, Americans, we're so bad at that throughout history, that we then take our eye off the focus. We lose focus. Like, we're not there, man. The job is not done. The door might be open to getting the job done, but that's my concern right now, is that this is presented as a victory over the Iranian nuclear program, and we can move on to the next thing.
I am worried that by spiking the football and demanding everyone accept that the program's destroyed, we are kind of ignoring that there is more work to be done. Like, why aren't we airstriking the remaining uranium? Why aren't we striking the remaining sites? The centrifuge production areas, the centrifuges that are in storage. It just seems like all of a sudden the entire government and some people in Congress have just merged and swarmed this conclusion as destroyed, that now any further action seems ludicrous, because if it's fully destroyed, you can't have further action, right? So I just worry that we're spiking the football. We're dancing. We're running to the end zone, Preston. We're dancing. We're doing somersaults there. We're on the 10, the 5, the 4, and then we get tackled and we fumble. And I'm worried the Iranians are going to pick it up and return it for a touchdown.
Yeah, that's
That's so, I'm very, very concerned about that. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
No, I agree. There's been an unnecessary distraction over this status of the strikes that does not need to be there. It's a self-inflicted distraction. And I think part of this is it's going to come out with, I'm losing confidence that I think we're in a post-truth world, my depressing take, to where, like, it doesn't matter what comes out of this. The goalposts will be shifted enough to where some people will say, see, we told you, it's obliterated. And other people will say, see, we told you, it's still there. I'm confident, depressingly confident, that is going to be where this goes in the coming weeks and months. But even if everybody were to get on the same page, miraculously, we wake up to a new dawn, and everyone agrees, left, right, and center, my God, they're obliterated. The entire nuclear weapons program has been destroyed. Even then, we wouldn't be done with addressing the Iranian nuclear threat. And that's my concern, is we can't even get to that phase 1 agreement. And phase 1, I think it's going to be so exhausting when we do that people are going to be like, yeah, great. I saw some people yesterday in comment section saying, why are we still talking about this? So, like, I think there's already some folks in the U.S. that are like, this is done, right?
I remember when the Ukraine war broke out, we were covering it on TikTok, and we had people like a week later saying, oh, I forgot this was still going on. What? We truly live in the Amazon Prime TikTok world now. But do you feel like there's something... This is not me being a conspiracy theorist. I'm just asking a real question. Do you feel there's something off, something smelly about what's going on here with Iran? Because at the beginning, you had Tulsi Gabbard telling Congress, reiterating what the Biden people said, that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon, or they have not made the decision to create one. Trump says, I don't care, and then he forces Tulsi to change her statement. She changes it, and then they strike, and now we spike the football, and it's all done. Woo. But then now, like we said, there's no follow-up or anything. Do you feel like there's something wrong here? Do you feel that the reason maybe the White House is hand-waving everyone else away, saying don't worry about it, Trump has handled it, is because the threat was greatly exaggerated from the beginning? Or do you think the threat was always there, and now they're just, trying to make him infallible? Do you see what I'm saying here? Mm-hmm. Kind of get at my point, that it seems like the intelligence said one thing, we strike, and all of a sudden everyone needs they're telling everyone, don't worry about it. I don't know. Something just seems off there, and I'm not sure if I'm just being conspiracy-brained or what. No,
we quickly moved past that. What is the new intelligence that all of a sudden changed this long-standing U.S. assessment to needing immediate action? I do think the conversation was flawed for a long time. We were putting it in time frames. Like, is it going to take them 6 months or 12 months or 9 months or 2 years to do what? And the end state was always like to sprint to get a nuclear weapon. And there's all sorts of different aspects of that that weren't clear. So people were able to use a lot of different timelines depending on what they were trying to present, I think. And it's not something you want to miss, right? So if you hear it's a year, it's like, well, we better start doing something now. My gut says that Iran has been on the verge of developing a nuclear weapon for a long time. There's definitely, according to the IAEA, they've had a sprint in their production of highly enriched uranium in the last few months. So, like, there's definitely been a trend in that direction. I don't think there was a memo that went out or a directive that went out. It's just that Iran has a lot of the stuff needed to make that push, whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, whatever it might be. My gut says that everything just lined up too well for Israel to not take advantage of this historic moment. And
I think you're right.
Yeah. So when you're looking back over, like, how is this pulled off, it's Hamas completely tied up, Hezbollah not able to enter the fight. The Houthis, I think they fired a few missiles yesterday, but nothing really there. You've got the United States probably closer to Israel right now than we've ever been, at least in my lifetime. You've got Iranian air defenses degraded after the first few rounds of Iranian strikes. Israel was able to go in and go, oh, look at that. Our F-35s made it into Iranian airspace undetected. What do you know? We can actually get in here. There were some distractions then with U.S. I mean, there's a great piece in the Wall Street Journal came out today talking about the diversions, the distractions that the United States provided in terms of the nuclear talks. I think it just lined up perfectly. Israel's kind of dialing back in Gaza. They've got the intelligence they needed. They've been able to assemble drones and small teams inside of Iran. And it was just like, this is the time. It is everything lined up very, very well. It might not at a future date, so we go. And my gut says from that, the intelligence wasn't manufactured. Because I do believe that Iran had the desire at some point to move towards a nuclear weapon. And they had started that process. I don't know that it necessarily sped up drastically in the last few weeks to completely change U.S. intelligence over the last 2 decades. But that threat has been persistent. So,
what do you think the future holds, or what do you want for a future for Iran here? I mean, you have talks of, like, you know, the White House threw out this idea of basically a JCPOA 2.0. I think it's identical to the JCPOA, besides the U.S. giving them $30 billion to help them rebuild what we destroyed. What do you think of that? I think, let me give you my grand vision.
yeah.
If I was the United States grand strategist, which is, I think, is a position I just created.
Well, it should come open in a couple of years here, so you might get a chance.
Yes. So I envision, I think that what they had the JCPOA, Jesus.
There it is.
What a name. And I think what they had there was smart, and people criticize it because it had to sunset. But I think it was very clear. Iran's sanctions get lifted, and at that point, Iranians will see the beauty of the West. They'll see free trade, and with that, the freedom, presumably, that will come downflow from the free trade. And they will abandon the need for nuclear weapons because they'll feel secure with their neighbors, with the United States, with everyone else, and the need to have nukes will be gone. I think that's a correct measurement, and I think that can work with most countries. We've seen it work in our lifetime, and I hope the same for them this time around. I hope that we can lift that. Now, I understand the Iranian regime is a regime that funds terrorism. They wish death to America and death to Israel. They are bad hombres, as the president says. But I think that if we give the Iranian people a chance, they truly, I mean, if you read of the 3 years they had without sanctions, their opinions on the U.S., the opinions on everything, they had completely 180'd. I think you gave them 3-4 more years, they maybe have overthrown that government or they've replaced it with a new one. And I think that's the route we need to go. I don't think we need regime change. I think we can turn Iran with honey rather than vinegar. Iranians are very smart. 85% of them have a degree. They are, a quick bunch. And like you said, they're on the same internet as us. I think we need to give them honey, even if it may sting. But we should give them honey instead of vinegar.
Okay.
Thoughts?
I I think some key aspects there. I heard somebody recently refer to, I'm going to butcher this, but the JCPOA is progress, not perfect. I was like, that's a good way to put it. It did not solve all the problems. There were a lot of issues with it, but I think in retrospect now, and people have been arguing this for a while, is probably the right direction to be moving in. And I think it's still going to be up in the air whether or not a true negotiated settlement would have been preferred to what we've just done. I think the jury's still out on that one technically. Mm-hmm. The challenge in Iran, to my understanding, is the Iranian regime still has a pretty strong grip over the government and the people. So when you talk about the opinions of the people shifting to be more pro-American, pro-Western, cool. It's not the Iranian people that I've got any beef or concerns with. It's a select group inside of the Iranian regime. So let's make life better for those Iranian people, but I'm not sure that changes the core issue. And I think it's a big stretch to go from we make life better for those people, which would be a good thing just as a human, and then maybe they overthrow that regime and install a better government. I think that's a really, really big ask. And I know some of the frustration right now is that it did look in recent weeks like the regime was starting to get a little bit shaky. I mean, the last waves of airstrikes that second to last waves of airstrikes Israel carried out against Iran was against a lot of their internal state security apparatus, their domestic police, their domestic surveillance. Those were the generals being taken out. Those were the facilities being bombed. It was really kind of setting the stage for some sort of uprising. Now, I don't know that that was coordinated, or if it was, it didn't kick off, or maybe it never would have happened, but I know that since then, they've started rounding up people and killing them for suspicion of assisting Israel, and they're clamping down harder because they just saw a massive violation or penetration of their entire government by Mossad. So they're overly nervous now, and they're cracking down left and right. It's probably not going to get better for the Iranian people anytime soon. So I don't know. I like that big picture, the idea of let's be better friends with Iran and see if that moves us in the right direction. I don't know. I'm skeptical that will actually get us there.
Maybe I'm overstating the overthrow of the government. That's a bit dramatic. But what I mean in the sense is that when the Soviet Union fell, everyone in the Soviets, everyone got aid packages. How many countries came out of there? Who knows? But all of them, in Europe at least, besides Russia, worked out. They over time got rid of the corruption. They over time embraced democracy. They took on capitalism, and now they're exploding. They're the hottest economies in Europe. And I think that can work for Iran. And I think the key inflection point here is that the Ayatollah is 85 years old. He's going to be graveyard dead here pretty soon.
Yeah.
He's not going to live forever. And so I think you give the Iranian people hope before he passes. Maybe there's not another Ayatollah. Maybe, and I know people think, the regime lives forever, but when Stalin died, the Soviet Union had to massively scale everything back. There are no more gulags. They had to apologize. They had to kind of write over his history and kind of forget about all the stuff he was doing. And also we saw in the ancient days when the Brits kind of forced the king into having no power eventually. So I don't know. I think there's hope there, and I hope we can be the beacon of freedom for these people and return them back to their natural place here in the West. I think I'm hot. I'm bullish on Persia. I'm bullish on Iran.
Iran.
What if they? Would you support them renaming themselves Persia? If they say we're a democracy now, but we're not Iran, we're Persia. Would you say hell yeah, or would you say
the New York mayor race? I don't live there. Call it whatever you want.
Fair enough.
Have you seen Death of Stalin?
I have seen clips from it. I have not.
That wasn't the question. You've not seen the movie.
No, I've not seen the movie.
You should check that out. I think you'd like that. It was. I saw some previews and thought it just looked kind of stupid or over the top, but it's pretty hysterical.
Is it good?
Just made me thinking when you're talking about the falling of a regime and all that. It's pretty solid. But hey, look, bright side here. It looks like the worst of the worst forecast didn't come true. So we had some people like Tucker Carlson saying that anything with Iran would lead to tens or hundreds of thousands of casualties. I'm happy to see that it does not appear, as it was never really in the cards, boots on the ground in Iran. I like that. I stand by that. I think we still have more work to do there. It would be awesome to find ways to do that without American soldiers. they're doing it. I
Absolutely.
think keeping Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon is a benefit to a lot of people around the world, not just the United States, not just Israel. So ideally, we can work together to find some solution there that does not involve a U.S. invasion. And it looks like right now that's not happening. So great.
Absolutely. Do you know what else is good news, Preston? Are we so back? Are we so back with NATO and Ukraine? Are
Maybe.
we like?
Yeah, maybe that was a good summit. That was a good summit.
I think we've never been more back. Do you want to start the recap, or would you like me to do the recap? I mean,
take it away on the NATO recap that we did not attend. By the way,
no, we did not attend, and I think honestly, I probably would have brought a negative energy that maybe would have given a different outcome to this summit. So,
thinking very humble there, Ben.
Very humble. It lives and dies on my mood.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Trump goes to the summit, and he says he's looking forward to seeing his European friends. And I thought, oh, good. And he's there, and he gets on well with everyone. Everyone's happy to see him. Of course, there's a lot of flattery taking place, and there's a part where he interacts with a Ukrainian reporter who says, we need more Ukrainian Patriot missiles. And Trump appeared to be touched. I don't know if you got the same reading by that, but he did seem to be touched. Her husband was fighting on the front lines. He asked her to tell her husband hello, and he said he would see if it's possible for the United States to produce more Patriot missiles for Ukraine, which is nice because they've been running out, and they just keep running into a brick wall. It's like talking to a brick wall in Washington for them. And so that was very good. And then we saw him meet with Mark Rutte, who is the Secretary General of NATO. I've met Mark Rutte before. I think he's a nice guy. But he's there talking to Trump, and him and Trump are friends, I guess. And here's some insider baseball for all you don't know. I don't know if I can say this. I think I can say this. NATO specifically picked Mark Rutte after Jens Stoltenberg because they suspected that Trump was coming back and that the isolationist attitude in America wasn't going away. And Mark Rutte is a friend of Trump. He is the Trump whisperer in his first term because he was the Dutch prime minister then. And sure enough, he Trump whispered again. He's texting him, on the way there, Trump releases a text from Mark Rutte, which is like, dear sir, or they call him Mr. President, my dear Donald. What is going on in Europe? That is now 2 European leaders who are calling Trump my dear Donald. What? What is going on? And no one here calls him that. We just call him Trump or the president, whether you like him or hate him. No one's calling him my dear Donald. Anyways, they're writing like they're in Hamilton or something. And he's just like, you had such a beautiful, great strike in Iran, and we can't wait to have you here. And I've gotten everyone to agree to spend 5%, and we're really looking forward to having you here. And they put him up in the castle in the Netherlands with the king and the queen, and they really flatter him. And then they have a public. Of course, this is the thing everyone saw. They had a very public press conference, and before Trump went, we played the clip where he drops the F-bomb, and Trump's talking about Iran and Israel, and Mark Rutte says, yep, and sometimes Daddy has to use strong language. And everyone, it was I don't know. It was like talk about like Trump having to discipline Israel and Iran, which is kind of weird, and then Mark Rutte saying, well, Daddy sometimes has used foul language. Anyways, Trump is then asked about it later. And by a reporter, a British reporter, who says, Mark Rutte called you Daddy. Do you view the NATO members kind of like your children? And Trump's recollection of events there compared to what we saw, maybe I should play it here in the podcast. But Mark Rutte says, sometimes Daddy has to use wrong language. Trump's recollection to the reporter in front of everyone is, he said, yep, Daddy, you're my daddy. I love you, Daddy. And that's not how he said it. That's not how that went at all.
Just very uncomfortable.
Right. And Marco Rubio's back there, like, cringing / laughing. He can't hold it together. Just very weird. But for the most part, everything went really well there. Everyone seemed to like him. He somehow dropped easier trade conditions on the EU while there. He also, everyone agreeing to pay 5%, and he said, I'm leaving this summit with a different view of the alliance because I've seen the passion and care they have for their countries. And I thought, wow, who would have guessed? Except all sparring and fighting was saved for the American media, which I think's fine. That's fine. He can fight with us. I just prefer if he didn't fight with other nations, right? What happens here, we can fight as a family. That works for me. But he did go after Spain, and he said it was terrible. And he asked the Spanish reporter, he said, "Are you from Spain?" She said, "Yes." He goes, "Congratulations." And then he continues to rant on about how they're not paying 5%, they need to, and they're being hard in trade negotiations, which I don't know if that's true, because Spain is in the EU, so he's not negotiating with Spain individually. But then he threatened to apply an import tax on Spain unless they spent 5%. And everyone agreed to pay 5%, but they carved out an exception for Spain, who, my understanding is they have a lot of high debt, and they can't really rearrange their spending to account for 5%. I've heard some Spaniards say, well, we're going to use our 2% to buy what we would have bought with 5%. And I don't think that's how that works. But
5% right here, you know?
Yeah, 5% in your heart. Look, I got no hate for the Spaniards. Do what you got to do. But, so overall, a very successful summit. The meeting with Zelensky went very well, according to Trump. He also finally acknowledged that Putin will probably try to invade the rest of Europe after this is said and done. So that's good. And overall, I would say he was on his best behavior. That sounds a little condescending, but I think going into it, I think we kind of expected something.
You don't
bad.
normally talk about daddy like that.
Yeah, we don't usually talk about daddy. Did you see they're selling T-shirts now?
Of course they are. There are probably MAGA shirts floating around already. Make Iran great again? Those got to be out there.
Yeah. The White House is selling daddies back. The White House is selling daddies back. I thought you meant
like some cheap store on Amazon. No.
Oh, no. The White House. The White House is selling T-shirts that is Trump's back or daddy. No, it's daddy's back. And it is 3 pictures of Trump and I think a fighter jet. And it kind of looks like one of those 1990s like NASCAR shirts. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah, daddy's back. So maybe they'll sponsor us, give us a hookup here for these shirts. But yeah,
Unclassified.
Mark Root defended his choice to call Trump daddy, saying that he was just playing around at the friends, and the European press really laid into him. There seemed to be a lot of people upset that their leaders were very flattering to Trump, very conceding to him. I think, I'd probably be annoyed if my leader, if Trump had conceded to like someone I don't like, I don't know. I like all world leaders. Putin, I guess if he was nice to Putin, yeah, you're on. I'm always on here complaining about that. So, so I think that would be fair. But I think probably in their country's best interest to just be nice to him and then go back home and say whatever. But yeah, that's how the summit went. Do you have any thoughts, any analytics, any notes? I mean, what did you think? I mean, it was such a spectacular area.
The 5% piece is notable,
yes.
No doubt. So there's some important notes here when looking at this. For reference, the 2% was a gentleman's agreement, is the way to put it. That all NATO countries would spend 2% of their GDP on defense. That's not a law. You can't get kicked out of NATO for not meeting it. And historically, most countries have not met it. As of right now, 22 out of 32 member nations meet the 2% requirement. Mm-hmm. So it's trending in the right direction. The jump to 5% is not the exact same. It's actually a jump to 3.5% on core defense items. So the things right now that are counted for 2%, and then the additional 1.5% can cover broader security, such as cyber defense, hardening ports, bridges, energy grids, and resilience projects. So they're kind of broadening what defense spending is. It's not just fighter jets and soldiers anymore. There's more to it, which is a smart way to look at it. And one of the frustrations with the NATO spending is the accounting system has been confusing at baseline. And I don't know, I've heard argued that it should be more based on capabilities. Like certain countries should be more pressed to provide more naval power based off of where they're located, or some should be forced to upkeep certain airfields or air defense assets just based off of their maybe proximity to Russia. That sounds really complicated. Probably the best big picture if it was pulled off. But the accounting piece here is messy. Ben, what do you got?
My understanding is that they are. That is how it is coordinated.
A little bit. So there's some of that of the NATO planning of which countries should pursue what. But I'm saying it's entirely possible that doesn't meet the 2%. Lithuania might be able to do what we need from Lithuania without hitting 2%. Yeah. If it hits 1.7%, but they meet all of the requirements, That's part of the issue here. Is we came up with this number, and now everybody has to meet the number, which I guess is probably the best way to do it. Nonetheless, 5% now is a combination of the 3.5 plus 1.5. If we look right now, based off of current spending, the United States, Poland, and Romania would likely already hit that 5% number.
Yeah.
Now, the 5% is set by 2035. So that is a 10-year goal. This is not next year. It is not 5 years from now. It is a 10-year goal to get to that 5%. 3 countries possibly already there. Quite a few more like UK, Germany, France, and the Baltics. This new accounting would push them over 3.5%, still short of 5.
We don't even pay 5%.
Spain, Italy, and Canada, notably, are pretty far down there. And again, as you mentioned, Spain essentially said, yeah, we're not going to do that. And the interesting part there is it seems like the response was okay. Like, not happy, but okay. Like, I don't...
They use France as a personal shield.
Spain does?
Well, just geographically.
Physically?
I mean, you have a lot of land to go through before you get to Spain.
That's true. So, yeah. Anyways, the 5% I think is an interesting breakout. Smart move. I like it.
It's interesting. So we don't hit 5%. And when Trump was asked if we're going to hit 5%, he said no, which I thought was weird. I don't know why we wouldn't try to, but we are at the 3.5% of GDP.
About 3.4 right now. Well, but that's the thing is, and this is some of the, I get maybe it's just the political talk is 5% sounds good, but it is not. You're comparing apples to oranges when you do 2% to 5%, or even our current 3.4% to 5%, because the 5% is a different number. It's incorporating in things that we in the United States would probably have under FBI, probably under Justice, Homeland Security, maybe even local police to a degree. A lot of that seems like it would be incorporated as well when historically it would not. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was reading, last year I read this book on the history of NATO, and it would shock you to find out that as far back as JFK, the Americans were complaining about the Europeans not paying enough into NATO. So apparently this is not just like a recent problem. It is a generational issue since the very beginning, which I think is fair. I would like to see, I know we've kind of changed that, if the 5% with the other 2% or the other 1.5% being dedicated to infrastructure and aid for Ukraine. Yeah. I would like to see us kind of count more. I don't need Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia to get fighter crews or to get huge armies. I need you to spend all your GDP on fortifying your border, okay? And we should count that towards that. And I know that's kind of a step towards it.
I think that's where this is going, yeah.
Yeah. The war is being fought in Europe with Russia. The war is not being fought in the United States. It's being fought there. And they should be developing infrastructure that's ready for a war. And that is a step in the right direction. But I'd like to see them get more aggressive in it, in this thing, be more accommodating for it. I also think, is the 3.5% military spending, it's a clear deterrence target. You don't need to spend that much to fight a war with Russia. You could likely do it with what you have now. But to get the 3.5% is a clear aim to create these militaries to kind of contain Russia. My question is, you militarize and everything, but what happens when the Russia threat goes away if they don't attack, right? Do you just kind of go through a peace dividend and it is what it is? Or do they look for a war elsewhere? I don't know. Maybe that's an insane thing to say, but historically, and I know a lot of things have changed in Europe, they do tend, I don't know, maybe they'll join us with China. Who knows?
You talked about the buildup of defense in some of these countries. I want to say it was Estonia, but there was an article recently that came out talking about how they are doing that. They watched the war in Ukraine and saw their one of their big takeaways, a ton of takeaways, but it was once you lost terrain, it was very hard to retake it.
Yeah.
Is one of their aspects here. So they're seeing one of the things that Russia's been successful with is advancing, digging in, and making it very, very hard to seize that terrain back. So they have been, again, I think it's Estonia, but it's either Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania, had started a big project fortifying their borders, anti-tank ditches, anti-tank obstacles, minefields, and they famously in the last few months gone away from the Ottawa Treaty that banned landmines or anti-personnel landmines. So they are noticing that, they are paying attention, and they are already starting that investment. I imagine this. So I think a lot of this additional spend will go directly to that.
I think you're probably right, and I hope you're right. Yeah, but the NATO alliance stronger than ever. What is a little concerning was they talked about how the U.S. will be drawing down and withdrawing from Europe in an orderly fashion. And it'll be a slow withdrawal, and I don't know if that is... I mean, it's good. It's not like the vacuum we thought we would see, where the U.S. just leaves one day. They said it'll be orderly, which I think it's fine. I'm not sure I'm a fan of it, though. We don't really have the details of, like, are we going from, like, 100,000 right now down to, like, 50? Are we going down to 10? Are we going down to 0? I don't know. That makes me a little nervous, and but we will see. I also don't quite know why we need to withdraw from Europe. The reason they keep saying China, but, like, everyone else we have is here, right? Or in Japan. How many people are you going to put on Guam? How many people are you going to put on Okinawa? Right? I mean, there is a limit, right? And at a certain point, you're just making them sitting targets for missile attacks. So I just think, I don't know. I think they're being a little overdramatic, especially since most of the European nations cost share. They pay for the salaries of the soldiers. So I don't know. But we'll see. Maybe it'll be slow enough that it won't matter.
We'll see.
Yes.
Learned a lot there, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, any conspiracy theories, any hot gossip, anything you'd like to share?
No, the Iran thing's worth keeping an eye on. Again, my concern is that we are viewing it as mission accomplished, mission complete, and no matter what this battle damage assessment comes out and says, there are still aspects that were not targeted, were not taken out, and still exist, whether it's hidden facilities that may or may not exist, or just the knowledge and the know-how inside of Iran to pursue a nuclear program that still need to be on our radar. So that's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on, and then getting back into, honestly, not seeing what happened, but kind of getting back into some Ukraine updates here as well. There's been so much focus on Iran recently. Putin looks like he used it to a little bit his advantage to kind of pick up drone strikes against Ukraine, but by and large, what we've seen in recent weeks is Ukraine has generally stabilized some areas of the front that for a while we thought were starting to fall. So those two areas, keep an eye on. That's about it.
Absolutely. All right, folks, remember to like, comment, subscribe. Give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple. If you made it this far, let us know. And do you know we have a commenter every week? They call me Basement Ben. They insinuate I'm living in my mom's basement. That's not where you are? No. What? This is a brick wall. I'm not in a basement. I'm in my apartment that's brick walls. And anyways,
apartments can be in basements. I don't think that's the wildest thing to say.
I am above ground. Thank you very much. Cool, and
cool.
It's anyways, Basement Ben's what they call me. Unbelievable. The disrespect I've gotten online the past 24 hours. Unbelievable. Anyways, folks, we'll see you next week.